Hello, I am Rebby, and this is episode 4 of Lessons in Freedom Now. And today, what we're going to do is expand a little bit more on what we talked about in episode 3, which is the power of knowing and how important that is. But how does it apply to your real world life? Where does it really work, and how does it work exactly when you know that each individual has inherent and inalienable rights, and that how can you properly exercise these rights and these powers uh, within the world so that you don't create other problems for yourself. So that's what this is about today. So what I did here was I created a chart showing the difference between the individuals, which are here, these little people here, that's every human on this planet. And of course, everything that's below here is everything that's in service to the individual. And now the biggest misperception that people have, and you'll hear them parrot this all the time, is that they keep calling people leaders that are not leaders. Okay? This is the biggest thing. When you come into knowing like what is a real leader and what is not a leader, you'll stop parroting and speaking as though something is something it is not. Okay? You'll understand where the real power is. So for example, everything below this line, this triangle here, if you will, what is not leaders? All external governments, all administrations, all agencies, corporations, businesses, and groups. You know why? They're empty corpses. That's why a corporation is a corpse. Placeholders. They have no life of their own. Just like I gave the examples in episode 3, a handgun, chopsticks, a box cutter, and a pen all are neutral. They have no life of their own. They have no consciousness of their own. So therefore, they're purely neutral. They can be used for constructive or destructive purposes, depending on the individual that's using them. So, okay, so all governments, all external governments, groups, all that. What's below that is all job titles. Now, all job titles include right off the bat all elected positions, all titles like Prince or Duke or something like that, any kind of title, all technologies. And that underpins all of it. All technologies, because technologies are in service to groups, governments, and all job titles. And so, I mean, when I say all job titles, I mean all job titles. That also includes judges, doctors, lawyers, accountants, generals, Caesar, Pharaoh, president, prime minister, senator, congress members, actors, physicists, biologists, chemists, scientists, dictator, ruler, authority, teacher, manager, clerk, associate, anything, any job title. It is an empty placeholder. A human being is not a job title 24/7. They are a human being 24/7. They are an individual 24/7. But in our day-to-day life, we interact with these things, but yet we misunderstand if you don't stop and ask about that. Like, you know, how is it these people have power over me? Well, they don't. They don't. As a matter of fact, the people who are functioning for a period of time each day and for limited amounts of times are also functioning within a very, very limited range of job duties, of actions that they can take. This is a fact. Which means if they go outside of these very specified job duties that you get in a job description and they function outside of that, guess what? They're acting illegally. They're actually committing contract fraud because they agreed to operate within the scope of the title and also within the scope of the job description, which limits their ability to act. And so one of the things you're seeing in mass right now is these silly empty job titles in these groups and administrations, these people acting as judges or whatever, are negating what they agreed to do. They're violating their own contract of service to these titles, and in doing so, they're violating individual rights that are inherent and inalienable. We call these constitutional rights because they're evident. It's evident all men are created equal. It's apparent. It's built in. Anybody with two brain cells to rub together with a speck of rationale, common sense, understands this. So it doesn't matter if they all gang up together, they're still powerless in the overall against the individual, because the individual is a sovereign, which means over, above, supreme. You're a natural born sovereign. I don't mean these people who you sometimes hear about on the news and they're at war with the external government. That's not a sovereign. That's a ding dong. That's somebody who's lost, just as lost as any other person who's asleep. But anyway, the difference is, so when you know this, you're naturally not going to call these people leaders. You're not going to look to these people to solve your problems. Human problems are individual problems, and the individual has the capacity to solve their own problem. These are not like, what it is, it's a mentality of saying that they're like a fairy godmother and they're going to fix the problems of society. Well, the only way that you can fix a problem that is standing before you is to fix it within you, is to fix your perception. You're putting responsibility on somebody else to do the thing that you are not doing in terms of exercising your freedoms and your rights to act on your own best behalf. That makes sense, doesn't it? Shouldn't we all operate on our own best behalf? And what it does too is when you understand personal self-responsibility as what underpins your freedoms, then you come to also know that you can't, that the amount of life is directly proportionate to the amount of freedom you have. They're synonymous in the sense that they're directly proportionate. And so you can't have full freedoms unless you first take 100% personal responsibility. And to ask somebody else to be responsible for your well-being is backward thinking. It's the same backward thinking that you hear people running around for the past 2 years that are saying, well, I'm wearing this mask for your well-being. It's like, really? As a soldier, it's like, where were you when I was injured? Huh? What were you doing for my well-being? That's a laugh a minute. That's the same as saying, it's backward thinking that says human beings are perpetually sick until made well by another fallible human being. It's also the same thing as saying that the irrational rationale that these people are using, which is to say people are guilty until proven innocent by another fallible human being. Now you tell me, how does that work? It doesn't. It self-negates. It's absurdly obvious and evident to be completely irrational and nonsensical. Okay. So what these people are, keep it in your head, keep it here. This is knowing the placeless place and timeless time of knowing all the relative world is here and below. The material world is from your eyebrows down. Okay? Keep it in your mind. These are servants. They are there to serve you. They are serving to take care administratively of some action that humans are engaged in, how we create civilized societies. Because guess what? Like I talked about in episode 3, oppressive governments give birth to one thing, black market economies. They cause a lot of criminality. As a matter of fact, oppressive governments themselves being criminal cause the proliferation of criminality. But the difference is when you have oppressive governments, you have one thing rising, operating in two separate ways. For some people, it's going to be a black market economy. For other people, it's going to create a motivating factor to create what we call alternative economies. People engage in exchange in an infinite number of ways. And civilized people will always act in a civilized way. And they will engage in fair trade with other humans because they didn't forget that they are human beings. Now, one of the things too is I've got down here at the very bottom, and no, these are not your servants. These are impoverished-minded individuals. They're locust mind. They got a parasite in their brain, which causes fear. It causes them to believe that they're a HOLE person and that they're empty and they have to do their way to completion, to wholeness, WHOLENESS, to fill themselves up from the outside in. It doesn't work that way. If you do that, that comes from a parasitic mind. I told you why locusts swarm fields. A percentage of the locusts have a parasite, a tapeworm, that makes it so they can't stop eating. And so after they swarm a field, you'll see the ones that have the tapeworm because they'll eat themselves to death. That's how it works in this universe. When you understand how the universe actually works, the Tao, the way, you'll understand this. And so these people, I've got them laying down here and they're just asleep. They're unconscious. It's like, it's the same thing as being unconscious about not realizing, because others around you, the majority, it should appear, are calling these people job titles and agencies, leaders. They're not authorities. They're not leaders. You just have, if you go to get a license, you follow the steps to get the license because you're civilized and you want people to engage in a certain way that function kind of similar to yourself as a civilized person, that they go and they understand that they're driving around what could be a potentially 2,000-pound weapon, a vehicle, and that they understand how to operate it properly and abide by the stop signs and the traffic rules and whatnot, so that they can not only keep themselves safe, but they can help and avoid harming others unconsciously, right? There's nothing wrong with civility. It's not a negation of civility at all. It actually upholds it. It upholds what is our inherent nature, which is absolute order. Anything we call chaos is just where we have a frame of mind or a frame of reference, a starting point where we have yet to understand that there's actually how it is actually inherently ordered, because that's this universe. It's inherently ordered. Okay, so up here though, we've got the sovereign. And when I talked about in episode 3 of having all that power behind me, of when I wasn't playing into any of this stuff, because, admittedly, I've been part of a military that we understood this was going to happen for a long, long time, years, decades. We were messing around, fighting against this from happening and trying to illuminate people for decades. A lot of people wanted to say, oh, no, that would never happen. That would never happen. And here it is. People are just like, whoa. What the heck is going on? It's like, yeah, this was no shock to people like us. But up here, this is what I was talking about in episode 3. When I said I've got the power of the universe behind me, it's like floating down a river. That's the current. And like I talked about, somebody who even wants to change a trickling little creek and push it back, I'm going to change the flow of the stream of this water if I just push it back enough, if I just put enough effort into it, if I do enough, I will change the direction of the flow of the water. Well, guess what? You're going to drown doing that. That's an illogical, irrational, impossible thing to do, because Mother Nature is teaching you, as is Mother Earth, that there is a way inherent in this universe that it operates. And if you want to pretend like it doesn't, it's bully on you, you're going to self-negate. You're going to die trying to change something that couldn't be changed anyway. But up here, this is what I meant. The universe is behind you as a sovereign. So when you go floating down a river and you're not trying to change the way of the world, the universe as it actually is, not what people want to believe it is, but as you know it is, it's coming to peace with knowing you can come to rest and you can partake of the abundance. This comes from abundance mind. This is knowing. That's the power of knowing that I talked about in episode 3. Here, you've got the universe, the law, because the law, this is why I said in another earlier episode, I think it was 2, where I said that which we are calling laws are not laws. They're laws only in the sense of being loosely called that because it's lowercase l, plural. Actually, they're codes and statutes here in the States. In England, they were originally called writs of law, writs. Okay, it was policies that pertained to a certain period of time for the population at the time, but the way that most so-called laws, codes, and statutes are nullified, they're self-nullified. Just like here I mentioned there was a statute that said women had to have long hair. They couldn't have short hair. And it just kind of died out on its own because when the roaring 20s came in, it was all the rage for women to get these short pixie haircuts. So it just kind of died on the vine. That's how most so-called laws die out. The people just don't adhere to them anymore, and they just go to the way of the past. They're no longer, relevant. Okay, so we've got the whole, the WHOLE, and it's the all, the absolute. To know is abundance mind. Whole mind is quid et quo mind. So I live a quid et quo life, which means a what and why, or where, a what and where. So it also can mean what and what, or loosely translated, this and that life. Okay? You don't have to sacrifice the this in order to have the that. That's reality. Let's talk about this for a second. You want to know how you can have your cake and eat it too into eternity and perpetually? Is you have a thought here, I want cake, chocolate cake. So then outside of you, you either bake a cake or you go to a bakery and buy a cake, and then you're eating the cake, right? That's the feedback action. And you can do that into perpetuity as long as you have the money, the resources to buy cake batter, to make it, whatever, or to have people hand you cake. Here, I don't want any more of this cake, to have some cake. That's how you have your cake and eat it too in the absolute. And the old saying, you can't have your cake and eat it too, is only relatively speaking. They're talking about the same one cake. Who would want the same one cake? That's the only time that's valid, is in the relative. I can't have this cake at the same time I'm gobbling it down. In the relative. In the absolute, I always have cake. I have cake, plenty of cake, in it, all the cake I want. So that's what quid et quo is, as opposed to down here in the relative world. Okay, this is the absolute world, the purple world. The relative world is all about appearances and forms. It's the appearance of many. And it's where all belief is. The word to believe, right smack dab in the word believe, is L-I-E. It's in your blind spot here between your eyes. That's where the lie is. There's a book called The Kabbalion, which is an old book of Hermetic laws. And the way it states it is, all truths are but half-truths. Taoism would say it this way: all truths are but half-truths, and all lies are but half-lies. The key thing there being lowercase l or lowercase t and plural. So if you have a plural of something, somewhere hidden behind that is going to be the absolute. You're going to have to go looking for it. But believe, B-E-L-I-E-V-E, and belief, B-E-L-I-E-F, contains, it's a half. So a belief exists in the scope of the third dimension of space, wrapped within the fourth dimension of time. And it only exists for a time, because when you go looking for truth in the absolute, you're going to find it. And what belief does is it sets up a paradox. And it also is a catalyst to get you to move forward and to grow beyond a current belief, which is a limited mental construct, okay? So just like this, I'm telling you, you're probably growing already in terms of your mental construct. You thought that these people were your leaders. You thought these people could tell you what to do. Well, that's incorrect. Not a little bit, but in the absolute. They can't tell you what to do or not to do. They don't have that power. They can sit there and stomp up and down, and I talked about this in the first episode, which is the big bad wolf coming to your door. Here's what happened. In the past 2 years, these people, the big bad wolf, all the big bad wolf had to do was threaten to huff and puff and say, well, I'm going to go huff and puff. And people just rolled over. This is called mass psychosis. And now people are 2 years into it and they're realizing, oh, boy, I'll tell you what, they're starting to wake up and realize that they've been, bamboozled, led down a bad path, and they're starting to say, oh, okay, we're sick and tired of being sick and tired of this, which is how you get to your bottom line absolute. It's catalytic. It's part of the process. It's not a problem. And they're saying, I've had enough. What are we going to do to knock these people out of our way? These big bad wolves. It's like, like I said, if you're the little piggy sitting in the brick house, you're going to let that wolf come up and huff and puff his lungs out, and he's going to blow himself into smithereens, and you're going to just have to go and drag his dead carcass over to the trash heap. because he's going to self-negate. He's going to kill himself. You blow enough, it's that whole, trying to change the flow of a stream. This is what tyrants do. They all come to, history shows us over and over again, the only outcome for people of tyrannical, totalitarian, overlording mind is they're human locusts. They just eat themselves to death on their own nonsense, and they kill themselves. This is it. It's the only outcome. Okay, so here, back up to the sovereign person, the individual, is unlimited exponential expansion. Hey, when you come from an abundance mind, you not only create exponentially and unlimited for yourself, but you do for others as well. And isn't that what we're here to do, is to do the best job for our families, for our communities, for our, our countries, our whatever, multi-ethnic cultures that we partake of, that we're part of, because we're all multi-ethnic. I mean, that's the beauty of diversity's inbuilt. It's a given, and having the ability to, partake of so much that is so beautiful and appearing diversified, yet arising from the same one absolute whole, is the joy in life. I mean, who would not want that? How can oppressing that ever be acceptable to anybody? Okay, so this takes us to what I refer to as the indivisible, deductible whole, deducible whole, right? It's deductive. It's the whole, W-H-O-L-E. It's indivisible. It stems from one. And so each and every one of us is up here. And of course, I've got three little people to represent we the people, and I mean we the people of humanity of this world, every single person without exception. And the Buddha said it this way: I've got their heads all at the same level. The Buddha said, put no head above your own. And Taoism would say it this way: put no head above your own and put no head below your own. All heads are equal to yours. Each and every person is the pearl beyond all price. Human life is priceless because we have so much untapped potential to create in this world and to help nature, to help plants grow, to help animals if they're in need. We have so much potential that's going unused right now. Anything below this, of course, is just appearances. Okay, again, all governments, all job titles, okay, none of this comes close to having any power. This would all be considered force, right? So let's say the government outside of you, this is the biggest thing I'm seeing with people right now. They're like, the government. No, these are criminals that have infiltrated government positions, and they're clearly putting on grand public display their criminal actions, right? They have all this power. They're going to blah, 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 do this and do that. And my dad, when I was growing up, told me something really true. He said, listen, there's what's said and there's what's done. And in this world, you're going to find out there's a whole lot more said than is ever done, because people love to run their mouths. They love to just blow hot air. And my dad's a Vietnam veteran. And so, he's military too. And every generation of my family was military. And you learn that in life. If you've been alive but a minute, you will find people love to talk nonsense and make idle threats. And sure enough, all these people, this tiny little minority in the world of psychopaths and sociopaths that have thought that they could just bamboozle and slip their way in, infiltrate these positions, would continue to go unnoticed, and everybody would be like, oh, well, so-and-so, the job title, the judge, the Supreme Court justices, or the government, the president, or the vice president, or the generals, or whatever, are saying we have to do this, and it's like, well, good luck in upholding that. The one good thing about people is, because they are the variable that mimics the ultimate master variable of this universe, is you never know what they're going to do. And so mischief makers, the good thing about them is they always put on grand public parade the fact that, you just never know what a human is going to do. You never know when they're going to hit their bottom line absolute. Because let me tell you, every person who gets bullied enough will hit their bottom line absolute, and they'll knock that bully out. They'll punch him in the nose. Everybody has that. Every human has that. It just depends on the human where that might be. But anyway, so below here, when we're in the world of belief, you're operating quid pro quo. You're giving up your what for your why, or your what for your where. It's a sacrificial mindset. You don't have to sacrifice anything. How can you sacrifice uh, everything that's been given to you? This is what I was talking about in episode 3 when I talked about you're given your birthright and your full inheritance and everything in between at the moment you were brought into this world. Your wholeness. Because no matter how much you thought you lost, or or things that are being done to you, the bottom line is you still have you, and at any moment you can say, hey, I've had enough of this. I'm not going to be a participant in this. I'm not going to be coerced into this, or blackmailed, or threatened into this. I can tell you all law comes down to contract law, and I can tell you there are like 7 things that will automatically void and nullify all contracts, and some of those things are things like threats and duress and fraud. Fraud vitiates everything. It vitiates everything. It negates everything. When the fraud is made known, it's like, wait a second, we didn't have a meeting of the minds. That's what shows up. But you're in a quid pro quo. So you hear people talking about quid pro quo, this for that, all the time. They're thinking they have to give something up, when in fact you're not giving anything up. It's that example of the having your cake and eating it too. Because if I can produce unlimited from thought into thing, and I understand that's the direction of this universe, then how can anybody like oppress me, right? You do what you want. You jump up and down and huff and puff, but I'm still going to do what I do. Humans do what they do. We've never outlawed any behavior. We've never negated or nullified any human behavior. All the same behaviors that humans have are still being done in the world, whether they're constructive or destructive. We're still dealing with that. We always will be. We're humans, right? Because there's 2 frames of mind: an impoverished mind, people who are asleep, believing themselves to be wholes, and they're just not yet aware that they're wholes, WHOLESs. This was the example I gave of, every sinner has a future and every saint has a past. That's 2 frames of mind. It's on a continuum. And so everybody wakes up at one point or another, So this kind of gives you, I'll get some close-ups of this, and I'll so you can see it, make sure you can see everything. But keep that in mind. Keep that front and foremost in your mind, that as time goes on and this whole thing, this whole nonsense of this global, like basically war on humanity, it's a giant human holocaust. Hey, self-eradicate yourself. You're sick till we make you well. You need to cease living until we, this tiny group of human locust, says you can continue to live your life. Look, if you're not living right now, right here today, exercising your freedoms, it's because the chains are in your mind, and it's fear. And once you shake out the fear out of your head, and you break the chains of limited mental constructs, beliefs, the lie, the half lies, right? And you move into knowing, it's game over for all these people. You have a finite amount of time from your birth to what we call birth to your death to experience your life. And if you're not living it fully right here, right now, the only one that's stopping you is you. Guaranteed, if I'm this little tiny female, not even 5'2", and I've been able to walk and do what I want to do and keep living my life regardless, this whole time, and my military buddies certainly have, because the way we feel about it is, look, we wore the uniform, which in America is about 5% of the population at any one time is wearing the military uniform that is protecting and defending the freedoms of the other 95% of the American public. It's like, hey, I did my job. I can't also think for you or stop you from imprisoning yourself because people are threatening. I've done my job, and I've certainly earned my freedom. Why shouldn't I exercise it? So what I saw, other people that weren't wearing masks and all this sort of thing or partaking of this in any way, shape, or form, they were actually a lot of veterans. A lot of military was just not having any of this. Not because we were better, but because we were still actively upholding our oath to the Constitution to defend freedom, to uphold the rights and the freedoms of our fellow Americans, against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And in this case right now, humanity is dealing first and foremost with a domestic enemy within many countries. So you have to make the decision what you want to do in moving forward with your life. And I hope that this brief little introduction has helped as to divvying this out. I also put up here an equation, okay, P equals R plus B, which equals P, which is purple. Guess what? Red plus blue equals purple. So it goes up in this direction, but it comes down in this direction too. And here are your delineating lines here between these two. And in the book of Leviticus, it talks about when you build the temple. Well, guess what the temple is? It's you. And it's also what the book of Revelation is. It's you being revealed to you, the truth of your own wholeness. And it talks about the red and the blue. And it doesn't stay, and it's like red and blue as primary colors equal what we call secondary color of purple. And purple is royalty. It is the sovereign, a color of sovereigns, kings and queens. So it's kind of a built-in riddle, if you will. But if you can solve that riddle, you'll have the answer for yourself, and you'll be led instead by others running their mouths. You'll be led by what you know to be true, regardless of how many people around you don't seem to be operating based on that. And I hope that you share this with your friends, because it's true. There's no organization or anyone out there, any job title out there that can refute this. This is true. And we're going to start teaching this in our schools and our curriculums, because the first thing we have to teach our children is how to have possession of themselves. And if they're not possessing themselves, then we're going to get another society. We're going to get another blow up of like what we have now and what humanity has experienced for the last 2 years, which is people are being led unaware, unconsciously, into being little drops, many, many little drops in the ocean of tyranny that people are experiencing, that are a lot of mustard seeds of humanity are finding themselves running up into what they think are mountains that are immovable. You want to move the mountain? This is it. The little mustard seed of the sovereign who knows moves all mountains. Because you have infinite number of actions you can take, of infinite number of choices you can make, how much you want to opt in or opt out of something. That's power. You can't ask for better than that, right? So I hope this has helped. I will be expanding more on this. I'm going to start doing more on what is called the language crystal, like these hidden, what's in belief and believe, the LIE, and how you can look into words and have a better understanding for yourself in future episodes. So if you have any questions or you want something clarified, please put in the comments, or you can always shoot an email. I'll put the information at the bottom here. And I really appreciate your time today. And I hope you have a really good week and a free and abundant week and life. Thank you.